We're recording.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the September 9th, 2025 meeting of the Policy Subcommittee. This is a fully remote meeting, our first of the new school year. So our members of the subcommittee are Mariah, Jesse, and myself. We're all here. Also from the school committee, we have Val Frias and Donna Perry. We have Betsy Fitzpatrick. We have Dr. Givens, our ANF Deputy Superintendent, Bella Wong, our Superintendent, and Justin Brown, President of the BEU, are all here. Okay, so our first order of business is to review and approve minutes for the previous meeting, which occurred on June 9th, 2025. So I'll move those minutes. Do I have a second?
Yes.
Thank you, Jesse. Okay, how do we vote, Jesse?
Aye.
Mariah?
Abstain.
Yeah, and I vote yes. Okay, that moves us to our only other agenda item, which is to discuss which policies to take up this year. So just a tiny bit of background on this. I think the agenda for last year's policy subcommittee, which was chaired by Stephen Ehrenberg, was largely set by a meeting that we had with the school principals in August of 2024. And looking at, so they were asked basically like what policies should we either revise or create that would be sort of most helpful to you as building leaders. And we basically took up, with one exception, everything that they raised with us. So the topics that they brought up were cell phones. We did that. Attendance, we started on that but haven't passed anything. Building access, again, we started on that but haven't passed anything. Surveillance cameras, which we passed, and the last thing was school resource officers. So that is one topic that we never discussed last year, as far as I remember, but we may want to take it up this year, and I think the school committee chair would like any discussion of that to originate in policy. So we can discuss sort of how we might address that in this subcommittee.
Betsy,
Okay, so that was.
hold on. Can we have the document can we have the document up on the screen, Betsy? Is that okay? The one you redid? So that's what you're walking us through, Andy, right?
Not yet. So this is
Oh,
just sort of what the principals had wanted us to do, and I'm saying that with one exception, we have so two of the policies they asked us for, we wrote and passed. There are a couple of others that we worked on last year, but didn't cross the finish line yet, and then one that we didn't take up at all last year, and we may want to this year. So
I'm
that's
sorry,
the
which was the one,
background before we get to what Betsy wrote for us.
which was the building access was the one they wanted, but we didn't get to? Okay.
And attendance, we got partway on that, and then somehow after December, we never discussed it again. It's not like we agreed not to discuss it; it just somehow never
Made
came
it.
to subcommittee again. So that's something that we probably want to get across the finish line now. Okay, so that was from last year. So the pending policies. So thank you, Betsy, for sort of maintaining this document and then sharing with us. It's incredibly helpful for us to just have on one or two pages sort of what where things stand as of now. So the five pending policies from last year, in the sense that we discussed them last year, but nothing got passed through school committee, are attendance, building access, the student code of conduct, student civil rights, and building signage. Okay, so those we certainly want to discuss today, sort of which of those to try to take forward and how. In addition to that, there are three things that we probably need to address this year. The first is competency determination and graduation requirements. So this is we're required by DESE to pass a competency determination policy by the end of this calendar year, December 31st. Now, the work on that is, I think, being done by our staff, and it's very curriculum heavy. And so we should figure out, like, do we want to just let curriculum address that and bring it to school committee, or do we want policy to to play a role there? Um, and then another thing that we did not discuss last year, but I think we should this year, is the big revision to the fiscal section of the handbook. So Mariah, I think we talked about this like informally way back. I think in principle you're willing to carry that work forward. So my
Yes.
impression was that 2 or 3 years ago, you did quite a bit of work on this with Sam. And then his departure and then subsequent sort of turnover meant that we didn't get it across the finish line, but it was in pretty good shape. And I believe that in the wake uh, of the audit, sort of just another look at the fiscal section of our policy manual might be a good idea. So we should discuss whether to take that forward and who would be responsible for that work. And then the last thing, as I mentioned before, is school resource officers and how we want to address that in this subcommittee.
I
And I,
would, go ahead.
I just want to add, can we add to the list, the class sectioning and assignment policy, which as far as I know is written. And I can't remember why we, Betsy, maybe you can remember, I had updated that document with both, there was like two sections of that document which got updated, but for whatever reason, we only, I think, voted, some of the other parts of it, but not the section I had written that was basically like, this is how class sections, basically like writing down what the process is now so that people don't think that it's school committee who decides whether or not to open a section.
And I can't recall, but I will dig that up and give everyone a summary.
Okay.
Right
I
after.
do have the original document still in my inbox, like hovering in indecisive land. So it'd be great to finally close that one out.
Okay, all right.
So that never made it as far as even being discussed in policy.
I think it was discussed in policy and then the decision was made, and I don't remember why, to like, there was two major changes. One was about districting, like, or assignment to districts. And again, this is like from the dawns of time, like a year and a half ago. And one was formalizing the current process into policy of how new sections are opened. And I think that for whatever reason, we decided not to touch that one for the time being, and then it just got lost. It didn't get picked back up again.
Okay, so that you think there's still a call for that, though?
Absolutely. I would
Okay.
definitely say, I mean, every single year people are concerned in writing to us, and it's not a school committee decision. It's between the superintendent and the principals, and nothing that is written changes like their flexibility and all of that to do their job. The school committee isn't inserted in that. It's just helping people understand that the policy is that school committee is not involved. The policy is that this is an operational decision.
Okay, that's is there an existing policy that we'd revise, or is it a
It literally just tacks on to the end of there's like a perfect section for it. And it was literally like, I just wrote a paragraph that went on the end as like its own little new number 13 or whatever it was.
okay? So if that one is already written, it seems uncontroversial because it just codifies existing practice, which is not going to change anyway. Then we can, and that'd be very gratifying if we can just take it up at our next meeting and then pass it through school committee if it looks good.
I'll look for all those details, then I can share them with everyone, when it was discussed and pull up the minutes, et cetera.
Okay, thanks, Betsy. So shall we tentatively just assign that to the next meeting if it's,
Sure.
as you say, just a paragraph and not controversial?
I mean, let's always knock on wood.
Mhm.
Right?
Yeah.
Controversy being in the eye of the beholder, but yeah.
Jesse?
Yeah, thanks. I wanted to raise one more. That would be in the policy manual, it's IJ, instructional materials. The reason I mention it is because in the addenda to the resolution about the MTA situation that we passed in May, there was a reference to instructional material policy in terms of how materials related to things in the international scene or either national or local issues that are political are handled. In going through our and subsequently the four other school districts who passed the resolution, later in May and in June, all had reference to basically the same file IJ instructional materials that's available through MASC, which touches on these kinds of topics. In going through our Brookline policy manual for instructional materials, there's nothing, no intersection at all. The current very long IJ section in our policy manual discusses instructional materials like bringing notebooks to school, providing pencils, teachers have desks, things like that. It's very much related to like materials. in the classroom. And it's very long compared to the instructional materials policy that seems to have been in 40 or 50 school districts at least that I hand checked through, randomly through the MASC site, that all pretty much are similar or exactly the MASC template for instructional materials. So I'd like us at least to take it up as an item to put on our list so that we can spend the time as a subcommittee reviewing the current one, looking at the ones that many other school districts have already ratified over the last couple of years, and then to make a determination if we want to recommend to the full school committee that we want to update our instructional materials policy.
So
Again, it's fine.
you're thinking that our discussion, or at least our first discussion of this, would just be to look at our existing policy, also look at the MASC template, and just discuss what to do next.
Yeah, I mean, in looking at, as you know, many of the policies that are in policy manual are very, very old, decades, some of them before, in terms of the most recent review. So I'm just bubbling this one up because it intersected quite importantly with the resolution we passed. That's what sort of brought it to my attention. Otherwise, I wouldn't, other than reading through the policy manual, I wouldn't have known too much about it. But ours was so different than all the other communities I've looked at that I felt it was important that we, at least, as you said, Andy, just look at the two next to each other and then ask if there might be a opportunity to make updates to ours.
Okay, Mariah?
Another policy that we had talked about a while ago, and I had drafted something, was on the Pledge of Allegiance. And the wording that we have in our current Pledge of Allegiance policy. And I would like to also bring that and any sort of other language that we have in the policy around civic engagement, around the ability of people to sort of reaffirming and reinforcing the ability of students particularly, but students and staff to dissent. There's a lot of executive orders coming out, flagging quote unquote anti-American activities. And I want to make sure that we have language in our policy that clearly protects people against quote unquote being labeled as quote unquote anti-American.
And this is a proposed revision to an existing policy or a new?
I'm not sure yet. It's just been something that's on my mind. There was a new executive order 2 weeks ago, I think it was. Maybe it was longer. But it was specifically about research funding, and it was about basically in order for to summarize some of the key points, maybe it was a month ago now, but it was for example, to accept research funding, no research can only be about, research can only affirm that gender is a binary. Research cannot support anything that is quote unquote anti-American. There's a lot of things coming out from the federal government that I think, we need to make sure that we have strong policies in place that demonstrate our protection for everyone in our community.
Okay. So
Is there
any other, before we move on to discuss kind of how we might set up the agenda for the year, at least the first half of the year, any other things that people want to propose taking up?
All I'd say is just that the flag one is written, so it was already
Meaning
edited.
you've drafted something.
Yeah, I already drafted it, and I don't know why it didn't get, like, it was supposed to be, I gave it to David, and I can't remember if it even got a first reading or if David said, this is helpful and we'll docket it, and then it just didn't get docketed. And then he stepped off and Steven stepped on, but it was like right before David stepped off the committee. So that might have just been like an
So that's
omission.
more than a year ago.
It is more than a year ago. For
Yeah,
sure.
it didn't come up last year at all. I mean, during our last year policy, Andy,
Right.
it's the first time I'm hearing about it. So yeah, it's an interesting one. I'd be interested in reading it. Yeah.
Okay, so let's see. I now see 11 items that it seems that we should at least discuss taking up. And given, I mean, that seems ambitious given that all of last year we ended up passing 2 policies, both quite short and straightforward, about 1-pagers, I think. So
I was just one other comment, Andy, though. The civil
Yeah.
rights policy was a mandate to review and and get done.
Yeah.
And we started it pretty early. We got a draft from Rebecca Schuster while she was on contract. And then we had a couple of, attempts to get all the way through to the bottom and rewrite it. I brought forward a rewritten version. We got about halfway, 2/3 through. And then Stephen essentially, we moved on to he led it and he didn't not do it, but in cycles, what happened was like external surveillance came up, finishing the personal electronic device came up, and it just sort of kept getting backburnered a little bit. But my understanding is that we have maybe even a statutory requirement to finish it. So I put that ahead of finishing those things that we are like finance is important, but it is important for sure, but I'm saying I think the civil rights one we need to sort of put front and center and get it done. And I'm happy to continue working on it and push it, help to push it to a reading at the whole school committee level. You need to, I have it where we left off with it, and we just need to make a decision of I'm happy to continue working on it. I'm not sure if Rebecca can be brought back in or not to work on it or not, but I mean, as a subcommittee, we could certainly get it, I think, I'm happy to get it to a point where I can produce it again and we can review it and then move it up to full school committee. I think it had to get done. It's like one of these annual civil rights reports about bias incidents and harassment incidents in the school that Karen had sent us a copy of when it went to the state. I think this one had to be done. So I think we're late on
I
this
agree
one.
about the urgency of that policy. I had a conversation with Karen Schmuckler about this beginning of the summer, sort of when I realized that I would be chairing this subcommittee. And yeah, I mean, I guess what happened to it last year, it wasn't really that it kind of got lost in the shuffle, but it was more that there were some pretty serious philosophical disagreements within last year's policy subcommittee about what that policy should look like. And I remember there was a 2-2 vote, I think, that resulted in it not advancing to the full school committee. I mean, I don't know how it's going to work this year, but I don't think of this subcommittee as a place where like any policy can just be, not advanced because there's disagreement.
Right.
I think at some point the school committee needs to just have the opportunity to weigh in.
Agreed.
If there are two very different visions of what that policy should look like, then, the full committee can consider, which way to go.
Right.
So I agree with you, Jesse, about the need to take that forward. I mean, my personal inclination is to be a little bit more minimal in what we do. Like, I think, a lot of what Becky Schuster had proposed was just focused on compliance with new language. And beyond that, like my inclination would be like, let's plan on one more discussion of that in subcommittee. And with the goal being obviously to be able to recommend a draft to the full school committee. But if, there continues to be serious disagreement, then, we can just at that point have the full committee discuss it.
Sure. That's
Does that
fine.
sound all right?
Yeah, great.
Okay.
I want us to help get it to the school committee. That's the goal.
Yeah.
Is it possible after this meeting for Betsy to circulate the last known draft, or is that linked from that document?
I did think I linked it, but
Okay.
I wonder if I don't have Jesse's final version. Let me show you what I pulled up here.
Sure.
So this is what I had, I think, for the April 28th meeting. I don't know if anyone can really see it too well,
Oh,
but
no, I can. No, it's okay. Yeah, I think this is the one in which I think I worked with Steven in a like offline and it was just as a separate, we talked about it because it's 2 out of the 4 people. I think he and I did this to try to get all the language straight. Yeah, this could be it.
This got very complicated because I mean I remember Carolyn also had many comments, and I don't know whether those are incorporated. And I have ideas of my own, partly based on my discussions with Karen. So uh, I'm not sure at this point there is like a single sort of canonical last version.
Andy,
Well, I mean,
given your conversation with Karen, does it make sense for you to take a crack at a next/first new draft?
Would the subcommittee be okay if I take on sort of the next draft. And you know my style, which is generally to remove things
Less
rather
is
than
more.
rather than to add them. So like you know what you're in for if I'm the person drafting the next version.
Yeah, I'm just looking at, um, we spent a lot of time at updating this. So if you're starting from, I mean, are you talking about starting it from a brand new, take a look at what Rebecca sent us the first time before anything changed that had the footnote at the bottom from Boston and everything? Or are you planning on like starting from this version from April, Andy?
Yeah, I mean,
What would your,
my approach might be just to start from the draft previous to this one, more or less as it came from our consultant, and
yeah.
then be looking at what what you did. Also be looking if I can find it anymore at what Carolyn was suggesting, and then of course I have my own notions, and try to come up with something that will be fairly minimal, but hopefully will put us into compliance.
Yeah, honestly, I don't think we were that far. It's just that we couldn't get back to, it didn't get redocketed for a subcommittee meeting. Yeah, keep going. Can you keep scrolling a little bit, Betsy, as we're
Yeah.
talking? Because
Yeah.
this looks very much like where we sort of landed, that it was just some wording changes, was trying to simplify some of the language, making sure all in this section on gender identity, yeah, this was all kept. So there's just a lot of little subparagraphs. Yeah, I mean, is this all part of something that was, there's nothing on the right. So does this mean it was kept, or that it was, yeah, this is the end of it already with Karen and Alvin and stuff like that. So, I mean, yeah. I mean, a lot of it was, I mean, at least I had gotten Andy all the way to the bottom of the document multiple times,
Mhm.
at least maybe even once with Steven. So, I don't know. I just sort of, um, wondering why would we want, if you go back to, if you're starting with the consultant's version, then we're sort of throwing out everything we've done subsequent to that meeting back in, like, say, January, February, all the way to the end of April.
But Jesse, if
I
the
guess not
committee
throwing
did,
out, but I'm just trying to be open that I would be using the consultant's version as the starting point,
Yeah.
and looking at all the subsequent proposed changes, um, rather than starting with the version that already incorporates all the subsequent proposed changes, which I have to say were highly controversial. And so I would not, my default would not be to start by accepting all the red in this document that's in front of us right now, but rather to start by accepting none of it and then seeing how much of this we actually want to put in. I mean, this got redlined to the point where it was just not possible for a committee to actually be workshopping this anymore. Like there were so many changes, and some of them struck me as antithetical to the purpose for which the policy was being redrafted. So, that's my take on it. And I think ultimately it's the full school committee that should sort of weigh in on how this should ultimately look.
I think part of the redness had to do with moving sections around. As in other words, rather than deleting them, it was like taking them out of one area and putting them in somewhere else. If this is the final version, I'd have to check what I have. This might be. I'd have to look at what I left behind. For the most part, other than some, I'm not sure. I mean, I wasn't aware of the fact that it was so heavily controversial. There were some changes to language, but again, the controversiality of it was not something that was shared with me. Yes, there were changes, but I thought that we covered in a respectful and honest way all the different requirements in terms of diversity, inclusivity, sexual and gender identity, etc. It was just like a lot of it at one point just ended up being rewording to or moving things around in order to reorder, resequence, and simplify. Like less is more kind of thing on a lot of this. I don't believe that anything was taken out that would like sort of undercut, the purpose of the civil rights policy in terms of its effect on any students or faculty or staff for that matter. Okay, well,
So would the subcommittee be okay with my proposal, which is that basically I'll collate uh, these two versions, the one kind of as it came from Becky and the one that's sort of marked up that we see here, and try to come up with something
Yeah, if I
that we
can,
can live
yeah,
with,
it's,
and then we'll just see, right?
yeah, if I can find, I mean, I'll look for the last like version I have, Andy, if it's not
Hmm.
this one. And this one says draft, what is it in 4.28.25? I'll see if I have something, not in Google Docs, but like on my computer. That's what it's called, Draft Student Civil Rights Non-Discrimination. And that was published on the website, it looks like. Okay. So let me see if if I find something, I will on this topic, I will yeah, the last civil rights, I have the original and a draft from 417. So this is like what? That's 11 days later. Okay, if I can
Mariah,
find something,
yeah. Sorry, I see Mariah's hand up. So you want to speak?
Um, I wanted to ask you if MASC has a model civil rights policy or no?
I'm not sure. The reason, we actually hired this consultant to work with us on it, because, right, there were all these things that needed to be addressed. So I imagine if there were like a very straightforward template, then we wouldn't have needed to do that. But I can't be sure.
Okay.
I actually used some of those, Mariah, when I was reviewing this policy, because there's AC, which is non-discrimination policy, including harassment and retaliation, which is only like 4 paragraphs long. There's one on non-discrimination on the basis of sex. There's a sexual harassment, non-discrimination basis of disability. They're all in section AC. There are 5 on the MASC site, and none of them are as long as, our this one that we got from the consultant is like much longer than even if you combine the ones out on the MASC site. They're much shorter.
It does
So
look like, yeah, there are, Andy, it
yeah,
does look like
AC.
there's MASC civil rights
That's
policies. So you might want to
5
look
of
at
them.
those too as you
AC
start your
at
next
the
step.
AC site. Yeah, the one that I have the most recent of, Andy, before I had met with Stephen, is like a side by side in Word that has on one side the full original, and on the other side the updated version, let's say. And essentially, more or less, looking down this, they end at the same place in the Word document. So as I said, a lot of stuff got moved around for flow, but it wasn't like whole sections were deleted to the point where if you line them up, in 2 columns next to each other, right and left, that the original is super long and the new one is 5 times as long or half. No, they're actually about the same length. So it's really a different kind of rewriting in terms of suggested edits. And in a lot of cases, some of the stuff is shorter. So I'm happy to send you the Word document too. It's got a side by side if that will help you in your, the original and the edits.
Yeah, I think it would. So if the
I'll send
subcommittee
it.
is willing to let me do this, then I think realistically, probably for November, would that be okay? I'll bring back a draft in November for the subcommittee's review.
Yeah, I guess one question is there some deadline we've already missed? Do we know? Maybe Betsy knows.
No, at least when I asked Karen or Dr. Schmuckler just how urgent is this, it didn't seem like we were on the verge of being,
Called out. Okay. All right.
yeah. So I mean, we should get it done, but it's not like we've missed some deadline.
Okay. Sounds good. All right.
Okay,
I
thanks.
guess November sounds good. It'll be interesting to see what else we're doing between September till November,
Yeah, so let's figure that out now. So I guess first we should address the ones that are clearly time sensitive, right? So there's the competency determination. So that has to go through 2 readings at full school committee. What I'm not sure of is how much we need to be involved in that. If we're willing just to let staff and curriculum deal with that and basically write a policy for which there is a template from MASC, then we don't necessarily need to spend time on it, Mariah.
This is just a clarification for my own benefit. I thought that last year the competency already had to be determined for graduation from the high school last year. So did we
Mhm.
do that in advance of the policy? Like, why do we need a policy if they already made a decision?
So Bella has her hand up. Maybe she can address this.
So I unmute and oops. So we had to do that as a temporary thing. And then these new regulations about the competency determination came out in the summer.
Okay,
So we
so
had
now
to
it
do
has
what
to be
we
a policy. Okay. Thank
Yeah.
you for clarifying. That's helpful.
Sure.
Yeah, so for that one, how about this? I will check in with the chair of curriculum and see whether, or how involved they plan to be. And well, I don't know. I want to ask you guys, and what do you think that this has to go through policy, or whether we're okay just leaving it to curriculum?
Well, if it's straightforward and already been written, I would propose that we do have it go one time through us, just so that it's consistent. And that we're aware of what's there, and then it should be a smooth sail there, smooth sail through school committee and done.
Okay, that just means we need to make sure that it happens soon, because we need it to come up twice in school committee before the end of the calendar year. And I don't know what I don't know what the timeline is for staff and curriculum to be working on this.
And curriculum already has 2 meetings in October relating to SIPs.
Right.
Mm.
Right, well, yeah, that's true. Yeah, I think it's better, right, like you say, if we just bring it up here. It should be straightforward if they've already have something written.
Well, why
This'll
doesn't
just-
Andy go back and check with Suzanne and come up and let us know what makes sense when the two of them? But I do agree. I don't want, to me, policies should go through policy, even if it's a pro forma, great, thank
Yeah,
you.
exactly.
Okay.
Otherwise, what's the point of policy?
Yeah, I'll give it a stamp of policy premature, that's all, you
Yeah,
know?
there you go.
Yes, sure,
All
okay.
right. So I will check with Suzanne about the timeline for that one. I
Bella
mean,
has her hand up again,
conceivably,
Andy.
we could schedule a joint meeting of the subcommittees. Yeah, Bella?
I was just we anticipated 2 readings, first reading and hopefully second reading and a vote in December. And so staff are fully aware, and I think they had anticipated connecting with curriculum at least. So I think we're working backwards from the deadline and then having again a first reading and a second reading at school committee, if that helps.
So both of those readings at school committee could occur in December, right?
Yeah.
So then the meeting where if policy wants to take it up, the last time to do that would be November 18th.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Okay, so another thing for November.
And you could always finish before then, but I don't know if we'll be ready. But anyway, yeah. Okay, thanks.
And Andy, I sent you and Mariah and Betsy a copy of that civil rights side by side, so it's in your PSB inbox. Thank you. Just to
Great,
let
thank
you know.
you. Okay, so anything else that seems time sensitive, so that we should make sure to address it in the next 2 meetings. So class assignment we already have for October because that appears straightforward.
If you're looking for something to do, I think that the flag one or the Pledge of Allegiance one, could be pretty straightforward too. But you can look at it and decide whether or not
Okay.
you think it's.
Yeah, I'm not necessarily looking for something to do because there's a lot to do. It's just, anything the things that aren't time sensitive are big, some of them, and we would need to get a start on them.
That's my point of like the Pledge of Allegiance is basically ready. So if we were looking to cover some topics before other things are ready, that one is ready.
Okay, well, let's plan to discuss that one in October as well. So then
If there were two, if there were, if there were, I know the finance one, their fiscal policy Mariah's working on, so that, probably a later date on that. In terms of, in sooner, you were correct that I brought up SROs as, for the docket as new business once or twice last year. Haven't brought it up in new business yet for this year. It'll come up at some point. But is there strictly a policy on that, Andy, as well?
Well, I don't think there currently is, and I don't know whether necessarily this would result in us writing a policy.
Yeah, that's why I
But
was asking. I don't
yeah.
remember one from any policy manual, so I don't know why it's on the list.
Yeah, and the school committee chair would like policy to sort of initiate the process of reviewing the whole issue, maybe by
Okay, that's different.
holding hearings, which is something this subcommittee sometimes does, right? It's just
Yeah, sure.
it's
Okay,
the place
I
where we begin to explore an issue.
Yeah, I misunderstood. Okay, so this is like just to give it a public hearing, as opposed to bringing it up and just having it start somewhere else other than a full school committee meeting where, somebody from the police department and residents and other people all come in, people for and against it come and discuss it there, let them discuss it at our meeting in the future. I get it. Okay.
Yeah. So we
I
should
understand.
probably devote like the better part of maybe 2 meetings to to hearings on this subject. I would think, just in order to prepare for a discussion at full school committee.
All right, the other one I would suggest we, probably think about sooner rather than later, because again, we did a bunch of work on it with Stephen, was building access and usage. I think you mentioned it in the list of 11, right?
Yes.
Okay,
So for that one, yeah,
one
so
part,
I think I may have I was missing during the last time that we discussed that policy last year, which was in April. So
yes.
I'm very fuzzy on sort of what the purpose of that is now. So I think it started off being partly about opening up the buildings to caregivers at pickup and drop off, but that idea went away at some point. And so what remains now is mostly about after hours usage, right? And so how close did we get on that one, Jesse?
Well, honestly, it sort of stopped at one point because I was made aware that Mariah has been involved in some of the after-school programs and maybe enrichment programs in terms of the policy related to how the rates are set for usage and other things that Mariah can probably speak to clearer than I can. So I'll leave that to her. That usage part I thought was going to have some of this in there. So if there are different after-school programs, different enrichment programs running different ways with different policies of how they say that historically either made a deal. I'm not saying made a deal under the table, God forbid. I'm not saying that. There are different arrangements that have been made maybe in different schools for how access is provided, whether or not doors are left open. Is there going to be a security guard there? If it's after hours, exactly what should be done. That's what I thought the policy was going to talk about. So that's why this section that Betsy's showing now, it talks about after school program usage. Where possible, we'll provide stable spaces. And I mean, we don't have to go through it now and do a reading. What I'm saying is that it was supposed to deal with I thought to fold in here our policy within the district on the utilization of our buildings in an equitable way for after-school programs, of which we have different styles in the district right now. And, the one at FRR is different than the one at Driscoll, for example. And then extended day programs, which proliferate across the board and are handled differently in different financial ways by different arrangements. Those after-school programs, like the one at Hayes versus the ones at other places, have in terms of their rates, the rooms, all this
They
stuff
don't have
is
different rates. They have the same rates, but that's okay.
everybody's.
Not the extent, well, the extent, yes, everybody has the same rates. As long as they are an extended day or a PTO or like it's by categories, not by organization, Jesse.
But is it standardized in a document somewhere that anybody can see
Yes.
what that is? It's because it's not in this one. I mean,
No,
this is just a draft. So is it somewhere else in a policy or?
It's not in a policy because it's not a policy. The rates are changed every so often and it's on the website. And as far as I know, staff then use that. How they disseminate it to the different organizations, I don't know, but most of the organizations were involved in the conversation. So like all of the extended days participated, Lauren Bernard participated, PTOs were informed, the Brookline Music School, etc.
Bella's hand is up.
Thank you. I'm just gonna ask, we could use some help maybe on the use of buildings in the summer. And so I think this policy doesn't address that, but I just wanted to raise it. If it's an independent policy, or maybe you have another policy that already covers it. But it's sharing space in the summer. When we're running ESY programs, it would be helpful to have a policy on how we're sharing those spaces.
You mean with rec?
Yes.
So we have a separate MOU that Susan and team were working on with rec to
Okay.
formalize, among other things, how
The
buildings are
summer.
shared during different times of the year.
Okay, so
Yeah.
good to know. All right, thank
Yeah.
you.
Because it is important and it hasn't been documented properly in a while. It's just gotten very out of date.
I will say that in the summer, it just felt like we weren't, the more optimal space for programming wasn't available to us. And so we just wanted to make sure when we move forward that we have a way of making that happens, that the most optimal space for ESY programming is available to us in the summers.
Susan?
Yes, I was just going to comment that there was language in the MOA that reflects that.
Okay, great.
So again, okay, thank you for bringing that up, Bella. That's very important. And we did hear from parents about ESY, so that's good that we have the document. In terms of this document, though, Andy, on building access and usage,
Mhm.
I thought that we were fairly well along on it at the end of April. I guess if we cannot,
Mhm.
if we don't identify some like major problems with it, why wouldn't we want to just move it forward?
Yeah, I mean, Betsy's notes on it simply say that so we moved it to the school committee, and then upon closer review, subcommittee members noted that this policy should be integrated with existing section K, so it was paused. I mean, it was just a matter of inserting
Oh.
it, of like somehow collating it with the appropriate existing section. Then yes, that seems
I
like
see.
not something that should hold this up too much.
Yeah, I mean, at the DSAF, I think that's an old terminology, right, Susan?
It's current Deputy Superintendent for Administration and Finance.
Okay, Deputy Superintendent. Okay, all right, okay, yeah.
Yeah, so if the only remaining task is to sort of take the current draft and figure out how best to incorporate it into the existing section K, then yeah, that work could be done for before October, and we could move it along at that point, right? Am I right?
Yeah.
So I wasn't there with principals, and it sounds like what you're saying is that principals said, do not let parents back into the buildings.
Yeah.
And I think that there is a bigger conversation that still needs to happen here, because I feel like we've gone from the Wild West of people coming in and out of buildings whenever they could and wanted to this part where no one's coming into the buildings. And while I appreciate that that allows for a lot of things that couldn't happen before, I do think that we need to think about this, because I will give one example. We are going into an override year. And it is extremely challenging to get people to feel like they are invested in schools such that they want to serve as override captains, for example. And so we see that there's a lot of, I'll say, disaffected adults who are responsible for children in the district. And if you look at, for example, PTO fundraising, those kinds of things are down. People's feelings of community are down. And so I think that perhaps while principals are feeling rewarded in their operation, there's perhaps less of a sense of the long-term implications of having people feel divorced from their community and divorced from the building and divorced from the things that are happening inside of it. And so I don't feel comfortable with this idea that we're going to continue with having no access to buildings. I think that there needs to be some sort of minimum threshold, because what we're seeing now is that unless we have a minimum threshold, like some buildings, like I think Driscoll has what they call community meetings maybe, and it happens like once a week per grade, and each classroom hosts, and theoretically anyone can come, but it's typically only the adults of the children in that classroom that come. But some schools don't have that. And so if we really leave a system where there is no ability for people who are the adults of these children, the parents and caregivers and grandparents and caregivers in general to come in, then we continue with a disaffected community that feels less committed to the schools for all of the different things we need, whether it's going on field trips, like as I said, overrides, donating to the PTOs, all of these things. So I just would like to have, I want to push back on this idea that we cannot have people in the buildings in a way that is respectful of the students and staff who have work to do there. There has to be some middle ground or some threshold for how we can have people in the buildings.
I
But
feel like
when
we've
you-
been having this discussion now for years, right? And it's kind of every year that's in some format, and the same discussion happens. People raise the very good points that you've just raised, and the principals are very unhappy about that idea. And in the end, nothing happens. And what we're currently governed by is like basically a memo that Dr. Marini sent out toward the end of the pandemic, saying that, well, during the pandemic, no
It
one could
wasn't
be
even
in
a
here,
memo. It was
we're
like a
gonna
Friday community
like leave it.
update.
We're gonna leave it that way for the foreseeable future, and so we're still living under that now, right? That's how it came about.
can I just ask, Mariah, are we talking about, when you say parent access, are we talking about the issue, for example, where Jane leaves her backpack at school, the parent tries to get in, and it's all the doors are locked, and you need to have staff
No.
there or take them away from something? We're not talking about that issue.
No, we're
What are-
talking about, so say back pre-COVID, we'll say it was 7:45 and you didn't just walk your kid to the building and they lined up outside. You might walk all the way into the classroom
Classroom, right?
and drop off your kid at the classroom. And at the end of the day, you might wait outside that classroom, pick up your kid, especially if it was raining out, for example, or inclement
Yes.
weather of some kind, you would go wait in the hall. Now, the problems were multifold, and I don't want to diminish the problems of that time. The hallways got crowded. Kids who needed a private moment for whatever reason, like there would be other people witnessing their distress or their dysregulation or whatever.
Sure.
There was a whole bunch of reasons why what we were doing before wasn't really workable from a school operations perspective. But now what we have is this idea of schools are going to be closed. And so, even if you want to, for example, like if you miss, let's say, open house, there's a good chance you will never see your child's classroom the entire year. If you're
I
not,
see.
unless your classroom does like a,
Field trip and you pick them up or
January, or even
something.
no, like a January, like an art show and tell or something like that in the
Right, or a chorus
class
thing or something.
breakfast or whatever,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Even a
yeah,
chorus
yeah.
event, you won't be in the classroom, you won't see it.
I got it.
And so I think that, like, again, the issue was people were wandering the buildings and they were trying to do things like impromptu parent teacher conferences. That's like 8 a.m. is not the time for you
That's
to
right.
download to your teacher your child's stress. But so there has to be, structure in place, but right now it's not it. Andy, as far as I know, school committee has talked about it a lot. As far as I know, the only time principals were consulted about it was at the policy meeting. And I wasn't there and I don't know what happened. I just feel really strongly about this. And I feel like we've gone too far. And again, I think that they're underappreciating the long-term impacts of the operational choice that they have made.
I guess I'm a
I
little
was just,
skeptical about whether there even is a middle ground here, much less the ability of the school committee to land precisely on that middle ground. Like, I don't know, my impression from working in a school is that you kind of need bright lines, and the kind of policy that we'd be likely to write if we're trying to, balance both sides is to me unlikely to be workable, if even interpretable at all. That's my take on it. And I feel like
I would love to get
I've seen this
Bella's
conversation
opinion.
go around so many times, and it's always the same thing. I don't see how we're getting to a middle ground on it.
well, is there a policy in MASC about this? I haven't seen anything about like whether parents can walk their kindergartner into class or not. I know I did it for years with my grandchildren, and now they're old enough to go in and find their rooms on their own. I don't think that I had no idea this was even related to building access and usage, though. What we're talking
Bella,
about
can you
now.
comment on sort of this issue and what you've seen and how it's been handled?
Actually, I don't, I think I'd probably be better to be able to talk to the principals of what their experience has been. And I would love to comment, but I feel like I should talk to them.
that sounds good.
Yeah.
But again, Andy, on the topic of this policy, I don't get the intersection. I don't see the building access policy, building access and usage having a paragraph in there that states in sort of absolute terms what our district's policy is going to be about a parent coming into the school. I mean,
Right. And in fact, that's where we landed last year, is that we were going to move ahead with the policy without addressing
Yeah.
the issue at all.
Right. That's
Yeah.
right. I mean, there's a lot of things about building access in terms of opening the school to the community in a positive way. This is pro looking for, say, an override vote support kind of thing, right? And things about usage of the schools in a respectful way that handles maintenance afterwards and all the payments and things like that, so that all the different organizations that are looking for space, Council on Aging needs something, whatever, some overflow crowd from the senior center, can use, let's say, FRR because it's close by and may have the space. That's what I thought building access and usage was going to sort of codify
Mhm.
in a way that just makes it, I guess, I don't know, public, that this is the district's approach to allowing the buildings to be accessible outside of classroom time and for what usages we're going to allow that. The school day belongs to the superintendent and her team and students, but it has nothing to do about parents. The after school time, that's where I thought this policy sort of was trying to get.
That's the
And I thought-
direction it ended up taking, right? I think basically after it became clear that principals would be extremely upset if the school committee, tried to
Right, but I'm
use
saying
the
if we're
access at the beginning and end of the school day.
Yeah, so if we're in agreement that the parent part shouldn't even be part of this policy, what's holding us from just
We're
moving
not
ahead
in
with
agreement, Jesse.
that? What
I'm
about
here
parents?
and I'm telling you, I just gave like a 10-minute monologue about why I care deeply about this.
I care about it the same way you do, but I'm saying why should that be in this policy?
Because
That's my question.
because it has to do with building access. And right now, caregivers do not have access to the buildings. Now, again,
Okay.
this is not about what happens from 8 a.m. until the end of the school day. This is what about picking up and dropping off essentially, and being able to come into the building in those little ways. There's I think what I agree with is, yes, we have a lack of the sort of communication about being welcome to having all sorts of town events happening in the schools. That would be a great thing. The other big issue we have is, for example, after school users, like the extended days, some of them have managed to get keys or fobs or whatever to get in and out of the buildings. Some of them don't, and then their own staff ends up locked out of the buildings. I'm
Yep.
not saying this is happening under the current operations staff. I just think it's been very unevenly applied,
Yeah.
and we need to
Okay.
have some standardization around the other users of the buildings. And the extended days tend to have better, because they're in the buildings day in and day out, year in
Yeah.
and year out, they tend to have much stronger relationships and everything worked out with the building principals and so on, so that they can get like better access. But it's things like a parent coach of an AAU team that has rented the space, and the parent shows up and the building's locked and they don't have a phone number to get in and they don't have any way to
Yeah.
get in. And so again, I think some of these things are really more operational. And so we need to be careful
Right.
that we're not dipping our feet into the operational side, but we need to make sure that that we expect there to be a plan for, if we're going to rent these spaces, we need to treat them like people are paying money for them. And that means they need to be able to get access at the time they've rented it and make it very seamless for them.
And I thought that was going to be part of this policy. Exactly. I'm in 100% in agreement with
Yes,
you.
I agree with you on those. I'm just saying that I really think that there's this other issue that every single time I talk about it with people who have been around long enough understand the difference in tone and community feeling in the buildings pre-COVID versus post-COVID. And that is, you're right, it's not addressed in your current draft, but I think it's a miss. And I think that there can be a middle ground, which is respectful of the principles, totally understandable need to have operational sanity in their buildings during the day.
Yeah. Yeah.
And also allows us to have some flexibility without having unknown grownups roaming around. That's not what this is about. It's about how we can make sure that we're still feeling these sense of community and all of those things that happened before.
The
So,
four or
Maria,
five
in
things.
the past, you have drafted some language embodying these thoughts, right? I remember
I
reviewing.
don't remember.
This was a while ago. It may not have come up in the past year, but you have done it in the past. So here's what I would propose. Okay, like there was unanimity on last year's subcommittee that the policy should move forward without addressing caregiver access. And apparently we got quite close in what remains. So, that document that Betsy showed earlier embodies the subcommittee's current thoughts on what should be in this policy. And the only holdup was that it needed to be integrated into the existing section K. So, would somebody be willing to take on the task of doing that collation and bringing it in October? Mariah, if you think that there is a middle ground that we can articulate,
It's not up to me. Bella has said she's going to go talk to the principals. To
Oh,
me, that's
okay.
the right way to, like, I think that's the right way to proceed, is to wait to hear from Bella and to sort of see whether there is a middle ground there.
All
I'm
right, that's
sure, I
fine.
feel
And
highly confident.
we've heard loud and clear from the principals on this, unless, they've changed their minds. Yeah.
And I think that, like, there's a loud and clear here on the other side. Maybe it's just me, but I don't think so. I think there's
No.
many more people who feel this way. And again, it's not a question of like lack of respect for the principals. It's just this, is there a balance here? Is there a little bit of a more middle ground we can hear? And I trust that Bella will triangulate and come back to us and help us understand if there's any middle ground.
I just want to be clear, you want me to go review certain language parts of the policy? If you just want to make sure you identify it for me so I have it right.
And there is no current language in the policy about this.
Oh,
I
there
think
is.
there have been
Yeah,
attempts
there
to
isn't.
add
That's the
language
problem.
that
I
would
mean,
that would sort of open up the buildings more.
The question is there some way to sort of, I think this is the question, Bella, is there some way to standardize a minimum threshold at which parents and caregivers feel like they can participate in the life of the school? Because right now, if especially above a certain grade, you almost never even can get into the school. It's in total lockdown.
While it's in operation.
Not while it's in operation, because that just messes stuff up.
Sort of
But
drop
like,
off and pick up.
right, drop off and pick up, or like,
Yes.
and for the
Yeah.
most part, this is really like for parents who are dropping off younger than 10-year-olds, right? Because that's really it. But
I have some thoughts about it, but I really feel I should check with the
yeah,
principal.
and that's why I was saying is it's much better to like let you have that conversation and see.
So could we tee this up for October where we would discuss this policy based on a draft that's basically, the thing that Betsy showed collated with the current section K. And then Bella, would you be able at that point to at least report on what you've been hearing and your own thoughts?
Yep. Can you give me a specific October date?
Yeah, that's
Have
I think
one?
it's October 21st is our
I think I'm not here the 21st.
uh,
So is that that's the very next one?
yeah.
Oh no, I'm here. 21st. I can do
Mhm.
it.
Great. I don't know, Jesse, would you be willing to do that work of pulling no, the new thing we drafted in with the existing section, just so that there's something that we can, in theory, send to the school committee after the October meeting?
Yes. I'm trying to find KI in the our current policy manual. It sort of ends at page 379 on K6. Maybe it meant K1 or something. I don't know. Trying to find it. School community relations. I don't think we have a section in our current PSB policy that matches section, what's it called? KI, visitors to the school, which is in the MASC one. Yeah, but do we have a KI section, Betsy? Oh my God, how do you find these things? You're a miracle. Yeah, so KI says the superintendent, this is on the MASC page. Superintendent shall develop procedures for visitor check-in and access to buildings. Once authorized, visitors are to proceed directly to the space in the building where the business they are attending to will be held.
We already
Staff
have,
can greet visitors.
that's different.
I know. I'm saying that that's like for some visitors to the school, but it means anyone who is not a current student, staff member, or district level member, which would include parents. But I don't remember seeing it in here. You're right. I don't remember seeing it. This was like different uses, renting, stuff like that, using it for a party, orchestra thing. If Booksmith wants to rent the space, that kind of thing. That's not this is not parent thing. I never remember seeing anything about that. This is the alcohol section. It's just not there. I mean, I say MASC has KI, which is called visitors to the school. Well, we don't have that. So I was going to suggest maybe before the next, whenever you want me to have this by, maybe Mariah could send me your paragraph, which by the way, I completely agree. I mean, I spent years coming, dropping my kids off inside Hayes. So I mean, and saying hi to parents and walking out when the bell rings or whatever, and picking them up at their classroom when they were in K and one, K and first grade, and they needed that was the expected thing. And it was warm and friendly and nice, and I didn't notice it being abused by people, but we shouldn't throw out the whole thing because there come some parents who have to talk to the teacher. That's, hopefully very, very rare. So yeah, it's just not here, Betsy. I don't see it.
You're right. I don't see it either, Jesse. You're right.
So maybe what we could do is take the building access and usage policy that we have from the last meeting, Mariah's comments about a parent drop off and pick up sort of procedure or approach or goal. And meanwhile, Bella will get some feedback from the building, which there may be different feedback from different principals actually, in their schools about how they run the culture, and then have it ready for October. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so
Okay.
I think we have a pretty decent sized agenda for October then. So there's this and then two policies that we hope are straightforward, the class assignment and the and Pledge of Allegiance flag. So let's leave it at that for October. For November, right? I've promised to bring back the civil rights policy, and we might also be addressing competency determination then. We might add something to November, but we have at least that.
If
Okay.
if you wanted to add something, I'd say instructional policy, at least on the MASC side, is like 2 paragraphs with 3 bullets or something. So there could be a lot of discussion about that's not the way we want to go in Brookline, but I'm just saying that many, if you go to the MASC side, if you go through the over 100, 112 something districts that are there that have their policy online, Brookline's not in there yet, but I'm saying if you go to all the other ones, like one after the other, they all are using the same instructional materials policy. So maybe that's something we can, come to some unanimity on. So,
Okay.
so at least we could bring it up for reading and it's short. The discussion may be longer, but I would suggest we do it if we can.
Okay. So I feel like we've accomplished what we needed to today. I mean, we can always discuss, at the end of the October meeting, what we want to take up in November. But I think we have a good start. I think we have on our radar the longer term items that we will need to address later. Mariah, you're looking skeptical.
He's on mute though.
I'm not looking skeptical. I'm trying to read my email as I find the old drafts to forward them to you and Betsy. So that you have them. It's just me squinting. That's all.
Oh, that's a squint.
Okay.
I just did find Pledge of Allegiance and forward it to you, and I'm trying to find the class size. I didn't forward it to you, Jesse, because I wasn't sure about quorum. Although I guess if I forward it to Andy, I can forward it.
Already, it's 2 of you. It's two of the 3 is a quorum already. So you miss.
So then I'll forward and then I'll forward the
What I'll need, the pledge one, I don't really need to see this time, but I mean, I'd be happy to review it. I would be more, I definitely want to see, because since it's already almost the middle of September, your comments or a few sentences about pickup drop-off access.
I don't know where that is.
You definitely drafted language. I might be able to dig that up given more time.
I'll try to do some searching for that too.
Okay, all right.
But I definitely just forwarded Pledge of Allegiance and I will find class size.
The class size one, is that would that be more relevant later, like after the October 1st, numbers are given out?
No. It's just a standard, like the school committee does not decide the number of classes, or it's like the superintendent decides in concert with the principal, and they use any factors, including but not limited to A, B, C, D, E, F, G.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not time. Doesn't matter when it's done.
Okay. So I think we have a good agenda for October at least. So
when will you have are you going to have Betsy? I mean, I don't want to wait how to say this. I don't want to wait till we review the minutes in October to see what we're supposed to be doing for October, right? So like what was your plan to have Betsy send out, your notes, Andy, about what we've all agreed to now for October, all the piece parts, and November, so that we have, like Mariah and I and you know exactly what we're gonna be doing for the next like month until the next, what's coming up for the next month, so we stay on track?
Why
How do
don't
you
I,
wanna do that?
why don't I quickly put together a little sort of checklist and work with Andy on it to confirm it,
That's
and
great,
we'll
okay.
share it out. How about that?
Yeah, Betsy, that would be very helpful.
Okay.
All right, thanks, Betsy. Okay, so that brings to an end that agenda item, I think. Any new business? Mariah, are you just trying to read something small, or are you okay?
And she's squinting, so yeah.
You look pained.
I am pained as I realize that my eyes are getting old and I can't read anymore.
Oh, no. Oh,
Okay,
no.
so hearing no new business, I guess we can end the meeting a bit early. So thank you,
Thank you,
everyone.
Andy.
Yeah, thank you to staff for joining us and to those who listened in as well. Okay,
Thank you.
bye.
Thank you. Okay, bye.